talk about trumpet valves. So of course I brought this trumpet that has no valves. To understand what valves are for and how they work, we really need to understand why we have them in the first place. We have them in the first place so that we can play more than the 2 notes you just heard. This is a post horn, and in the old days in England, there would be a guy riding shotgun on the mail coach, the post coach, and the shotgun rider's secondary job was to clear the path. And essentially, what I was just playing, or anything like that, meant get out of the way, we're coming through. All you peasants get off the road. So, you didn't have to be a particularly refined player to do that. Now there's a concert piece called the Post Horn Gallop that sounds a bit like what you just heard. Lots of military bands play it, orchestras will play it occasionally, and this is the instrument it's meant to be played on. Since it's limited to 3, maybe 4 notes, it's really not going to be a great musical instrument. The modern trumpet can play those notes because it has valves. This trumpet is built in B flat. That was built in A flat. All I have to do is push a valve down. Now there was another note in there, but let's not talk about that. I can play that on this trumpet. I pushed down a valve to do that because this trumpet really wanted to play it in this key. Because this is a B flat trumpet and those are the notes that it likes when the valves aren't pushed down. What the valves do, on this side you can see better that there's a little bit of tubing here attached to that valve, a little more tubing attached to this valve, and even more attached to this valve. It's kind of around the back. There it goes. Okay, so we can add these up, combine them, or have none at all, and we get all these different bugle call keys. So second valve is the shortest, and that's just because it's less likely to stick out and get broken off. And then we can add them together, which is the same as so while there are 8 different valve combinations, this one and that are the same. So really we have 7 different lengths of trumpet here. We need those 7 different lengths of trumpet to get all the semitones between here and here. So if you're thinking of a piano, we want all the black keys as well as the white keys. So that's a fully chromatic instrument now, the modern day trumpet. In the old days, well, this really only rode around on a coach. There were trumpets being played in orchestras, typically only playing the same kinds of notes. So if an orchestra was getting to the end of a piece and the thing was going bum 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 bum, well, trumpets were really good at that because they could really only play those notes. There were times before that when there were high trumpets, and there were times after that when valves got added that trumpets could do anything, and those are the pieces that we really love. Anyhow, what's actually going on here and how does it work? If you look at my trumpetheroes.com website, there is actually a post on trumpet valves and how they work, but apparently some people don't read. They'll rather watch a video. I think this particular valve cluster is on there, and it's basically because I can mistreat it and not be too concerned about it. There's a good photograph of the inside of a valve, which you may or may not be able to see in there. And this is the valve that goes up and down. So that's the valve casing. And you can see there's a little tab on that. That little tab runs into a groove on the upper side of that casing, and make sure that all these holes are oriented correctly. There it goes. If the valve is not pushed down, then the air is going to come in this pipe. It's going to slide through that valve, through the connector, through that valve, through the connector, pop out here and go to the bell. If the valve is pushed down, then it takes a couple of different holes and goes for that extra little bit of tubing. So it's about 9 centimeters if you're doing metric. I think that's around 3.5 inches for semitone, and then twice that or so for the full tone, and 3 times that original for the tone and a half. And as I said, in combination, that gets us all the way from the G, which is our second note, down to the C. It happens to have the bonus effect of adding some notes out the bottom. We're going to look at these fingerings now. When a student is learning to play the trumpet, they tend to focus just on the fingerings, but they really fail to realize that each of those fingerings can produce a whole whack of different notes. Let's look at the beginner notes first. They're the ones that I've got up here as big or whole notes. So without pushing any valves down, the beginning trumpet player has access to the low C, a G, and the C in the staff. Occasionally there's a kid who can just pop out the E, or rarely a G. These notes, it's essentially a bugle. They just keep going, depending on how good you are at playing high notes and how well your equipment and your chops are set up for playing high notes. For beginners, we focus on those first 3 notes, the lowest and easiest notes. When the second valve goes down, the pattern is exactly the same, but it's a semitone lower. So instead of C, G, C, E, it's B natural, F sharp, B natural, D sharp, or E flat, if you like. The notes are getting closer together, and that's a characteristic of the harmonic series, which we could probably talk about another day, but they are getting closer together, and that's going to, it's good for us, but it's also a challenge for us. First valve, B flat, F, B flat, and then D, F, and then we get the, this one that's marked up here with a flat, the B flat. As we carry that down through these other valve positions, you'll notice that it's always a little bit funky sounding. It's a fingering we pretty much never use. A is 1 and 2. Now that E same note, all 3 of those fingerings. We play it open. Almost all the time we play it open. 2 and 3, A flat. Oh, that's a C. That's this C. So if you notice, I'm getting to the point where I'm leaving some things out here. I left that C out because we never use that fingering. The low G and its friend the D, and the asterisk there is so that beginning trumpet players learn to pull this third valve slide out, at least to about there. A little more than a centimeter, or maybe 5/8 of an inch. Whoops. And the same idea for this C sharp that is above the F sharp. Now I've left out the next ones because they're so funky, out of tune and weird, that we just don't use them, because they exist already over here. So for G, D, the next note would be G, except that's one of our open notes, and the fewer curves and twists you put in a tube, the better it's going to sound. So this G sounds better than this G. That one's a bit sharp, isn't it? So we should maybe correct it. I'd rather rather use open than 1 and 3 with a cracked third valve slide. So that takes us down to the F sharp. That's as low as we go. The C sharp needs to be corrected. As we get higher and higher on the instrument, this bunching up of things means that we don't have to play much at all with the third valve. And then I usually use it for the high A flat, so I should maybe admit to that, which you could get in this fingering, but usually we use this fingering. There's the odd one where it just works better, and that A flat is one of them, or G sharp if you like. So that's what we do with these. Essentially, we're playing 7 different bugles that happen to share a bell on a mouthpiece. So a bugle call. You get the idea. 7 different versions of that. We get all the different pitches that are possible for us to play. When young trumpet players are starting to play with the valves, they have a tendency to move them slowly, and they think about what they're going to do next, and they go, oh, geez, yeah, that one. These fingerings do need to become fluent. There is an issue with trumpet players wanting to write in the valve combinations on their music. The big problem with that, it will give you instant results if you're only able to play 2 or 3 or 4 notes. But as soon as you get out to like 5 notes, the fingering only tells you a part of the information. So if you say, oh, that's an open note. Well, great. Which one is it? Is it G or C? Or is it the other C? So then how do you talk about these notes? It just doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense to look at the notes on the page, decide if they're high or low, and set your chops up to do it. So anyway, that's essentially how valves work. I'm sure we'll think of a few other interesting things about them, but oh, maybe you ought to know that, yeah. There's a bunch of trumpets sitting here. So this is a B-flat trumpet. This is the standard trumpet that every student needs when they go to school with a trumpet. If they show up with anything else, maybe a cornet in B-flat would work, but basically if they show up with anything other than a B-flat instrument, they're in trouble. Because in the old days, trumpet players used to have to carry a B-flat trumpet, a C trumpet, a D trumpet, an E-flat trumpet, they still make these things, and they make them for a variety of reasons. Not really to save us from carrying a bunch of trumpets, but because different sizes of trumpets have a different sound. It changes the fingerings for a given concert pitch note. And with some smaller trumpets, it actually helps to separate the notes that are bunching up in the harmonic series. It helps to separate them. So this is a regular, everyday trumpet. It's a B-flat trumpet. Maybe I'll play a scale on this one. So in most orchestras these days, most trumpet players will play most of their music on a C trumpet. Now that's definitely in italics and with an asterisk on it. The same scale, the same notes in my head are going to come out a step higher. Because this is not a B-flat trumpet, it's a C trumpet. These two are essentially the same, but you can see that the silver one is a little longer. It is longer, it's lower, it's in B-flat. This is a C trumpet. And when I'm playing the C trumpet, I'm reading pitches, usually, that are exactly the same as they would be on some other instrument like a violin or a flute or a piano. With the B-flat, you're always transposing. So this instrument C, D is a little bit longer than a D trumpet. So a D trumpet, and I think so far all 3 of these have come out of the same plant. This C trumpet is now the long one. It's a little bit longer than the D trumpet. That last note we heard should be the low C on this instrument. There's some really great pieces for the trumpet that are written for an E-flat trumpet. little soup in there. The Haydn Trumpet Concerto, you know, which is arguably the greatest trumpet concerto, but, you know, you get an argument going on that one, starts with a scale in E flat, which is perfect on this trumpet. So that was C, D, E, some other note, F, G, A, B, C. Yeah. Most people feel that Haydn wrote that as the beginning of that piece just to say, hey, we can play a scale with the trumpet. It's about time. And then you get into weird trumpets like this little guy. Today, it's pitched in B flat. So this C is unplayable. This C is the lowest partial, the lowest C on this instrument. And the point of having one of these is to separate out so you don't get this bunching up of too many notes possible with the same fingering. It sounds a little crisper and different. Most of the time you hear these in Baroque pieces where in the old days, before the classical period, there were some serious high note trumpet parts. And that's usually what you'll hear these played on. They were, in the day, they were played on D trumpets, but their D trumpets were twice as long as our D trumpets. It's a long story. This instrument also, it's in B flat today just for the demonstration purposes, but if I change out the lead pipe, in fact, I could probably just stretch this one and see how that goes. That's the key that we usually play it in. We usually play it in A. I've got another longer lead pipe over there somewhere, but we usually play it in A because we're playing D trumpet parts and we're transposing them. That's getting way too far out in the left field. It has a fourth valve for one note. I think it's for one note. You can disagree with me if you like. So, that note, it's low F, and F is, we can't reach F with three valves. The lowest note we've got is low F sharp. But there's a couple of really great pieces out there that require a piccolo trumpet in, you know, the way we play now, and you can't get there from here unless you've got that fourth valve. So that's what it's there for. It's for playing that low, transposed low C from a D trumpet part down to low F. Anyway, these, by the way, if you're a parent wondering, oh my God, do I have to buy all these trumpets for my kid? The answer is no, unless your kid is in university studying trumpet and planning on a classical career, or maybe if they want to tour with a Beatles, pretend a Beatles group and play Penny Lane, which is the other place that most of us have heard this lick. That business. That's the sound. Okay, I think I've got all my trumpets wet and everything's dirty. Oh, you know what? Somebody asked me about valves and they said, what is a spit valve? Well, it's not a valve. It's just a way, okay, it's a way of letting out the condensation in your instrument. It's got very little to do with spit because there shouldn't be a whole lot of spit going into your instrument, but there is a whole lot of body temperature air, moist body temperature air, hitting this room temperature metal. Hence you get condensation. It builds up just as it would on a bathroom window, and it trickles to the lowest point. And we just blow it out. If you're worried about spreading disease, well, get a spittoon like I did. All right, any questions about trumpet valves? Check my website, or I'll eventually get around to watching this video and realize that I forgot a whole important thing. Great. Have a nice day. See you soon.